The Team, Chapter 1, Ethan. Ethan had booked the cabin months ago, long before anyone else even knew about the trip. It had been one of those restless nights when work emails gnawed his brain until nearly 2 a.m., and instead of another futile attempt of turning over and finding sleep, well, he got up and he scrolled the internet for listings. The original plan had been to pick something deep into the mountains, rustic, remote, dramatic, something he'd seen on Prime Video or Tubi. But he had stopped at a particular photo. It was about a wooden A-frame set at the base of the range of the mountains. Close enough to feel surrounded by peaks, but still accessible, for a quick getaway so no avalanche could get them. Less of a four-wheel drive expedition, more of a landing spot. Ethan wasn't one for, let's say adventure. The thrills of life, such as snowing and skiing. No, he did not want any part of that. What appealed to him was more of a balance between escape and control. Now, months later, as his SUV crunched up the gravel path toward the cabin, he wondered if that choice would haunt him. He could picture Jordan already cracking a joke about the place not being adventurous enough, or Lucas quietly raising an eyebrow at its convenience for him, rather than think about everybody else who might like the winter and outdoor sports. Ethan knew how these dynamics worked between the group and amongst the other couples. Well, although he meditated about one decision could alter the weekend, he stuck with the safe option. Maya stirred beside him that day, pulling her legs up into the seat. She had been quiet since they had left the city that morning, earbuds in, sketchbook balanced on her knees. When she looked up, she caught him watching. "You're overthinking, aren't you?" she said, removing one earbud. "It's a cabin, Ethan. Wood, windows, probably a fireplace, and you'd know since you picked it. And I know for a fact everyone will survive because you picked it." He smiled faintly. "I just wanted to feel right, for everyone to like it." Her eyes softened, but she turned back to the window before replying, "Well, only time will tell." Ethan recalled that he had booked the cabin at approximately 1:47 a.m. on a Wednesday. His home office had been dark except for his screen, the computer screen, that is. The only light on the floor of glass and steel that went quiet after he turned off the lights to go into bed. But what gnawed at him was the pressures of work. Ethan had remembered he had taken on this leadership role, which he understood was good for his career, not so good for the mental or his sleep pattern. So here he found himself scrolling rentals, pretending it would be for leisure. It filtered for mountains and scheduled more of a four-wheel drive away as necessary, because he knew about the other partners. If they ever wanted to come up with them, well, that meant adventure, snowboarding, snowmen, getaway, adventure. But he still had in the back of his mind no reception, no emergency room, no grocery store, no margin for error. So he settled on the listing he chose as an A-frame at the base of the mountain range, not perched on some cliff, not hours winding up a road, like one of those one-street roads where there's a serial killer that lives next to you, miles and miles away as your next-door neighbor. No thanks. He didn't want something tucked away into the meadow, met with pines, with the peaks rising behind it like a stern audience. It was going to be no Mark Wahlberg in a shooter movie. This description promised a wood-burning fireplace, an outdoor deck, 4 bedrooms, perfect for the 4 couples, and a rustic charm with modern conveniences. The map pin hovered near a river curl and a fire road, which this mattered. It meant all the people who were going could still get a pizza if they were desperate to get one and not cook. He clicked book now. The confirmation hit his inbox with a soft chime, and for the first time, be it that night or in the early hours of the morning, his shoulders drop. Base of the mountains. Maya had asked the next morning when he showed her the photos over coffee before they went to work. She'd tied her hair up with a paint-smudged scarf, the same one she wore when she was trying to start something new. I thought you'd go dramatic. Gondola. Didn't we talk about that? Avalanche risk. The whole Laird Goes feral package, you know? He looked at her and said, base is still mountains. You know, it's literally, it says base of the mountains. It's in that sentence. Just with, better plumbing and water pressure for showering. She hummed a non-committal melody. Who's going? He looked at her and said, Jordan and Camille said yes. Lucas and Harper, they'll come if her event schedule, incorporates it. And Noah and Elise still TBD. We can deal with TBD. My eyes flicked between the photos and my face. You're planning this like one of your cases. It's a weekend, I said. I want it to go well. I'm invested, and you know me. I care about our friends. I care about the couples. I care about, the team. Well, I hope it goes well, said Maya. He looked at her and said, I do too. For everyone's sake. To be relaxed, people not checking their phones, and just feeling like, there's something on the calendar to look forward to. And when it comes, we can all gravitate towards each other, bounce whatever is in our hearts, and rest, relax. A little bit of R&R doesn't hurt. She smiled. He was trying. He was affectionate. He was convincing. Okay. And so he took the small win and forwarded the details to the team, to the group. 4 months later, here they were, crunching over the gravel of this rental driveway. And the mountain, well, it wasn't so steep. They were there, the A-frame. Good side facing the woods, the triangular roof dark as wet slate, strip of windows reflecting the sky. It was clean, simple, almost shy, as if apologizing for not being further up on the mountain. Cute, I said, looking at him, rolling down her window. I could smell the pine air pouring in, bright and sap sweet. She inhaled and reached for the handle before he had fully parked. The door thunked and she hopped out, landing light, the way she had always did, like the earth knew to catch her, instead of letting her tuck and roll. Inside the cabin smelt of cedar and old winters. The living room opened under a tall beam, a stone fireplace anchoring one wall. The kitchen was compact but smart, cast iron pans, a half bag of coffee from the last tenants, and a note about the finicky oven. Upstairs, there were 2 loft bedrooms with slanted ceilings. Downstairs, 2 rooms tucked by the hall, each with a quilt and a view of trees. It would fit 8. It would fit 4 couples. It would fit us all. Maya stood by the cylinder and watched a chipmunk run the railing like a tightrope. You did good, counselor. Ethan looked at her and said, thank you. He didn't want the praise, but he let it sink in. She knew he wanted it. We unloaded our bags. Maya claimed the downstairs room with a big closet. Art stuff, she said. But she'd only brought a slim sketchbook and a box of charcoal. I stacked groceries in the fridge, mentally organizing breakfasts and dinners the way I organized arguments. What needed heat, what could be assembled in cold, and what would keep would go in the pantry. The first car arrived while I was still wrestling the firewood bin onto the deck. It was Jordan in her black Jeep, pulling up like an advertisement. He got out and stretched both arms high, the con of his T-shirt tucking across his chest. "Look at this palace," he called. "Ethan, did you do this?" Maya slid the door open and waved. "Welcome to our base camp," she said. "Base camp," Jordan repeated, sunglasses on his head like a crown. "So we're not even mountaineers this weekend?" He gestured upward towards the Serenity skyline. "Trailheads start at a mile from here," Ethan said. "We can hike as much as you want, hence my plan. If you really want to be a mountaineer, let's go fucking hiking." Jordan grinned. As much as I want might be a brand new metric. He popped the trunk, and his partner Camille climbed out more slowly, smoothing her braids into a low knot. Ethan yelled out at Jordan, saying, "You've got Camille back there?" Camille stretched her hands out, being the nurse she was. "I just got off a 12-hour shift. I had to take a nap." As she walked up to the cabin, Camille touched the porch railing and then glanced at Maya. "It's lovely," she said. Her tone carried more weight than Jordan's jokes. We carried their bags in, and the air inside grew warmer with the presence of both Jordan, his loud energy, and his partner Camille, quiet assessments and compliments. It was the start of the mix that both Ethan and Maya had wanted. But for some reason, Ethan had dreaded. By late afternoon, Lucas and Harper had their headlights cut through the trees. Lucas' car was spotless even after the dirt road, and Harper climbed out first from the passenger seat, already into a crisp jacket looking like a mountaineer and the pine needles sticking to her shoes. She kissed Maya on the cheek and squeezed Camilla's shoulders, and then slipped into some ease of someone who could command a room without raising her voice. Lucas trailed her, hauling a cooler big enough for a week's worth of provisions, but you knew it was, as his favorite phrase said, "So, what's your poison, Ethan?" I brought wine, beer, cider, and good old number 7. He was a country boy. He said it simply, and then clapped me with an embrace warm enough to fill the whole cabin. By this time, the cabin had filled up a little bit more. Harper's plans: we should have a group hike tomorrow. And Lucas's steady patience, the way he absorbed her intensity without flinching. Maya looked at me from across the room with a cup in her hand, eyebrows raised. I gave a half shrug. This was exactly why I'd picked at the cabin at the base. Easier access to go shop for food, but still hike high enough, as high as they wanted, and less chance of Harper complaining about logistics if she ever needed to be in Wi-Fi range. By dusk, Noah and Elise were pulling up, their headlights cutting long beams across now the sky that was saying goodbye. Noah unfolded himself from the driver's seat, lanky and slower in movement than Jordan, but with a presence that demanded less. Elise stepped out after him, phone in hand, finishing a sentence before slipping it into her coat pocket. "Sorry we're late," Noah said. Though his expression didn't carry much apology, Elise brushed past him to hug Harper first, and then Camille, and then Maya, her perfume trailing her, and allowing all the guys to know the group was complete. The ladies were here, and so were the boys with Noah. 8 bodies in 4 bedrooms, each couple carrying their own rhythm, their own weight. The air inside shifted. This cabin was now busier. It was layered, slightly slightly cacophony. The opposite of harmony. By the first dinner, Ethan lit the fireplace, the crackle-filling silences of words that couldn't. Jordan insisted on grilling outside despite the cooling air. Lucas joined him, offering to make sure things didn't go awry, burn. Harper organized plates with Elise, while Camille chopped vegetables with quite the precision. Maya lingered between everyone, sketchbook still unopened, her eyes flicking to me often, like she was checking whether I believed this had been worth it. Dinner stretched long. Wine loosened the voices of all the couples, stories overlapping, laughter overlapping. It came out quick, came out loud, but underneath it all were currents that were tugging. Harper corrected Lucas twice, and he absorbed it with a grin that looked to practice. Elise's phone lit up more than once, coming out of her coat pocket, her eyes darting each time before she flipped its face down onto the table. Camille watched Jordan tell stories, her fork moving slower as his gestures grew bigger. From my seat at the head of the table, unintentionally chosen, maybe inevitably claimed, I noticed everything. That's what I wanted to do. It was from my vantage point. And I thought back to the night months ago. The cabin listing open. On my computer screen, my cursor hovering over it. I wanted balance. I wanted an escape without chaos. The plates emptied and the fire sank lower. The group thinned toward the porch, toward the lofts, toward bedtime. Maya leaned into me before leaving for our room. "You see?" she murmured. I nodded, although I wasn't sure what she meant by "you see." The cabin creaked as if listening, as everyone was going to bed. The weekend had just begun.